We start by looking at the symbolism of the Aquarian zodiac archetype. What exactly, how is exactly is Aquarius symbolized in the zodiac? Now, the zodiac, the horoscope, the constellations, they are symbolized by different things. But Aquarius is the only one that is symbolized by a human. Check it out. All the other zodiac signs are symbolized by things, animals, or a combination, a hybrid of animals and things. Aquarius is the only one that is human, and it is in that sense that Aquarius really is the symbol for humanity. And so that symbol is the graphical symbolism for Aquarius is that of a human being carrying a vessel of water and pouring that water all over the earth. Aquarius is not a water sign. Aquarius is an air sign. And so the water that we're really talking about here that is being poured out is condensed air, because that's what happens when you take air and you condense it. It becomes a liquid. Now, a liquid and a gas are literally the same thing. The only difference between them is that the volume within which the molecules are moving, if you assume that the entire thing is made of a molecular nature, then as a gas, the molecules are roaming more freely and more widely in a greater amount of volume than in a liquid, where they face more significant confinement in their degrees of freedom. So that water is really condensed air, and in astrology, air is the intellect. Air is what symbolizes mind and the ability to use mind, especially the ability to communicate with mind. But in Aquarius, it's a little beyond mind. It is the ability to tap into higher orders of knowing, and it's a process that first began, or that first you catch a glimpse of first in Gemini, and then you ultimately see more of it in Libra, and then in Aquarius you get the very condensed version of it, because Aquarius really is intellectual power. But it is not intellectual power as in who can do sums better. It is the power of mind, the self-awareness that comes from the power of mind. It's a very concentrated form of mind. And that is what typifies the Aquarian. If you know any Aquarian per se, anybody with significant placements in Aquarius, you would see that there is an intellectual aspect to their behavior in terms of an objective aspect. They like to distance themselves from emotional, personal feelings. It's not because they don't understand them, it's because they prefer to look at them from a distance so that they can intellectualize them and objectify them. It's the same way they treat their own emotions. And so Aquarius has a natural tendency to split themselves into two, so that one part of themselves observes another part of themselves, more like a thing of curiosity, and then they study this aspect of themselves, looking for clues as to what's really going on there. And what this translates to within the Aquarian is a desire or a penchant to be able to see and study systems of thought. That is how different concepts, individual concepts, are brought together into conglomerates of concepts, what we call a system. So Aquarius really is concerned with complex systems of thinking. That's really what it is. Now, the way the Aquarian arrives at these complex systems of thinking is through extrasensory perception, in a sense. The Aquarian is open to visioning, but there's a unique quality or characteristic behind this envisioning process. It is an envisioning process that does not follow the logical channels of rational deduction. It's a vision of knowing that just pops into the head and has no respect for the confines of space and time. So Aquarius can catch a glimpse of the future, all wrapped up in the understanding of today. And so they struggle with the understanding, the detailed understanding of the vision which they have just been made privy to, because they are trying to explain what that vision looks like with today's terminology and today's understanding, which is often very, very difficult. So one of the essential things about the Aquarian is that they're often misunderstood, very often. So in order to avoid miscommunication and misunderstanding, the Aquarian chooses the most objective part of communication with as little ambiguity as possible, and it uses that to try to relate to others. So it tries to, and this is interesting, it tries to do away with very ambiguous differences that exist between people so as to create a collective of intellectual unambiguity. This grouping of intellectual unambiguity is what typifies the Aquarian. A sense of, in this direction we are all the same. Commonality. What you call comradeship in a sense. Now, it doesn't mean that the Aquarian cannot be individualistic, but the Aquarian does not understand the nature of their own individualism. And so that is the reason why they bifurcate themselves into two. They dualize themselves. And the part of them that is individualistic, its job is just to study that part of itself that achieves group consensus or that seeks group consensus. It studies it, it watches it, it objectifies it, but it doesn't connect with it personally. So Aquarian concerns are not personal concerns per se. The Aquarian deals with their personal concerns by disappearing into the void. They recluse themselves from the environment and from their groups, and they hide away for significant stretches of time. So that when they re-emerge as part of the group, as if they never left. For some reason, they tend to ignore the fact that they have probably been missing for 2 weeks or 3 weeks at a stretch. Now, what are they doing in this time period? They're swamped with moods. They are confused. And the reason for that confusion is because, remember, there is the important part of Aquarius that ultimately becomes Pisces. And the difference between Pisces and Aquarius is a matter of scale. The complex systems thinking that Aquarius can see is scaled up significantly in Pisces. What allows the Aquarian to be able to maintain the intellectual perspective of the complex systems thinking that they can perceive is because they don't lose track of the dynamics of the complex systems thoughts. They're able to keep track of how the thinking is changing, how it's morphing. When it becomes Pisces, the connections become too much. They tend towards infinity. And so the Aquarian loses track of the dynamics. And that's why the Piscean appears to be spiritualized. Because spirituality is just an extension of thinking to realms that are not understood in terms of how cause and effects are linked together. So this is the difference between the Piscean and the Aquarian. Now, as the world as the equinoxes have evolved and the Earth's axis has precessed from Pisces to Aquarius, different types of groupings of individuals have emerged. And these groupings are often along the Aquarian line, whereby a lot of individualistic aspects of group behavior are stripped, or individual behavior are stripped away, such that the only thing that is allowed to emerge is group consensus. So that way you can become part of a country, part of a state, part of a municipality, part of a tribe. These are all Aquarian instincts. The individual concerns don't matter. Just the wherewithal of the group. But the essential thing about the Aquarian is that Aquarius is an intellectual sign. So the group in itself is always an intellectual group. And being an intellectual group, it is like a professional group. And within such groups, competences are given higher value. And so nepotism is not a part of the Aquarian mentality. The Aquarian sees the development of competence as the ultimate group requirement. And so Aquarian groups are typified by fairness, in a sense. They're typified in a sense also by chaos, because chaos is assumed to be fair. It's random in a sense. But it's a controlled kind of chaos. One that doesn't give undue influence to one group or to one aspect of the group or another beyond the demands for competence. Now therein lies the Aquarian instinct that is pushing us into the new age. Now, most people don't realize it. 300 years ago is when the cusp of the new age began for the transmission from the age of Pisces into the age of Aquarius. 300 years ago. Now it is on that cusp, that's 300 to 400 years ago, it is on that cusp that the elements that will eventually become the United States were founded. And so the United States was founded on Aquarian ideals. It wasn't a coincidence. Some people think there are many stories or versions. The one that has been more romantically publicized is about rebellion from the British king, etc., etc. Well, they could have founded any other type of nation, but they founded a nation that is built or that is around Aquarian ideals. Freedom, liberty, an individual free to express their competence irrespective of their race, their religion, their sex, whatever. That's what it really means. That's the group Aquarius wants to create, is an intellectual group, a group where the intelligence of the human being, the entrepreneurship and the ability to envision a future that is good for all mankind is given credence, is given more value than all the other individually nuanced versions which are brought into the group. Those are suppressed because it is a matter of the collective. Aquarius, by its very nature, is communal. And that's an interesting thing. Now, communal doesn't mean communism, because that's an entirely different prospect. But Aquarius only encourages individual behavior in as much as it elevates the group. It makes the group more competent, better. But the context will always be the good of the group. Now, America is a very capitalistic society where the individual is elevated beyond the concerns of the group, or so it seems. That is the theory. But that is not what America is. That is not what America was founded on. America was founded on the behavior of a tribe of white supremacists. Now, there are other things that are also very Aquarian. For instance, it is within these emerging years of the age of Aquarius where we have founded global institutions. You don't really have empires per se in the world. You have countries. These are formalized empires. The formalization process is empirically Aquarian, because the whole idea of formalization is to drive competency. You also have things like global institutions like the United Nations, the WHO, the World Bank, the World Trade Organization. These are all Aquarian entities. because all their mandate is derived from the fact that it is for the good of all humanity. Now, when Pluto ingresses into Aquarius, you have to understand that Pluto is the examination regarding the use of power. Pluto itself connotes power. And the reason why it does that is because Pluto connotes the aspect of man that is deeply sexual, but not sexual in a loving, kind way. No, it is very primitively sexual. The part that constantly is looking for the penetrative instinct that comes from the orgasm. The desire to pierce through the veil of all reality, through all the falsehoods of reality, to reveal the essence, the source, the nature of existence itself. That is the plutonic drive, and it's a very powerful instinct in humankind. It is the seed nucleus, really, that is responsible for the emergence of humanity. Every other thing seems to be wrapped around it, and that's why the sexual instinct is extremely powerful in humans. What Pluto examines is how these primitive aspect of the self has been able to enter into self-consciousness, and what this has implied for that desire. Now, since we are a society, an organized society, the tendency has always been to suppress all plutonic desires, such that we only engage in them in the privacy of our bedrooms or privacy of our houses and all that. The desire for privacy is very Plutonian, because Pluto reveals a vulnerability about human nature. It's a sexual vulnerability. Now, the basis for, power is influence. And in human nature, power is equivalent to your ability to influence other human beings, either positively or negatively. But power comes from sex. That's where the power instinct and the power drive comes from, the drive to propel yourself into ambition. It comes from sex. It is the instinct of sex that created money. And so the two areas that Pluto examines most importantly are the areas of sex and money. Now, money is not a real physical, it's not a real natural thing, but sex is. And so money can be replaced by the desire to do what? What does money allow an individual to do? Money allows an individual to express more of themselves, more of what they are intrinsically. So money is like an access key card, allowing you to express those parts of yourself that you would otherwise suppress. So if you haven't got a lot of money, you can't really act out your true behavior. And you have a lot of money, you can be as eccentric as you want, and everybody will make an excuse for you. Now, but most importantly, money allows us to buy influence, to be able to influence others, to get agreement and acceptance from others on a large scale, on a mass scale. The wealthiest people in the world, if they have something to say, everybody pays attention to what they want to say. And everybody begins to debate their comments on their views and all that. If those people had no money, they had no influence, nobody would care what they say or how they say it. So that is the essence of the plutonic experience. So when Pluto comes into Aquarius, first of all, let's try to understand what Pluto's experience in Capricorn has been. Now, Capricorn is where the final product that is developed is demonstrated, is exhibited. Capricorn is an exhibition of mastery. It's an exhibition of something that has been in development for a really long time. That's what Capricorn is. And so Capricorn is associated with the establishment, but Capricorn represents the custodians of the influence group that controls society. So the people whose opinions matter, you can call them the elites. And today they call them globalists because people have changed. And the nomenclature simply is that change from Capricorn to Aquarius. Because in the olden days, they used to call them robber barons, the wealthiest, powerful people of society. Now, Pluto's passage through Capricorn showed up this class of the society, and it stimulated a whole lot of suspicion regarding this class of society. Why? It's because Pluto is like something we do in the dark. That's why it's perceived as very powerful, because it's so unknown, so mysterious and all that. And so it is this aspect of the behavior of these very wealthy and powerful people that has been brought into the light all over the world. They are deeply mistrusted now. And all their hidden activities, right? All their activities are being scrutinized by everybody. In the mass media, the mass consciousness of humanity. They have come to be perceived as totalitarian control freaks. So they want to control the whole world. They want to control the whole world. But nothing has changed about the behavior of wealthy people. Wealthy people have always done that which protects their wealth. And that's the way they've been doing it for a long time, since the idea of wealth came into being. The only reason why people started feeling very strange about it is because Pluto has been transiting through Capricorn for the last 15 years. Now that has prepared for Pluto's transit into Aquarius, and that's where the result actually starts to show. Because remember, the way to understand the signs are in pairs. You have a vertical pair and a horizontal pair. In this case, I'm interested about the horizontal pair. So whatever starts in Aries finds manifestation in Taurus. What starts in Gemini finds manifestation in the sign of Cancer. Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces. That brings us to the age of Pisces. Now, but you notice that the equinoxes, they tend to go backwards instead of, while the zodiac, the horoscope itself is read in an anti-clockwise direction, the equinoxes are read in, the precession of the equinoxes are read in a clockwise direction. Why is this? Because the equinoxes, the precession, concern the collective of all humanity, but the individual horoscope or the natal chart is read for individuals. So as a mass collective of humanity, it appears that we are precessing backwards. So we go from Pisces to Aquarius to Capricorn. And what happens when we go from Aries to Pisces? In Aries, we are dealing with a single individual unit. In Pisces, we are dealing with the mass consciousness of humanity. So what is changing is scale and volume, interactivity. In Pisces, you have maximum interactivity with everybody, all of humanity, both everyone who has ever lived. But in Aries, you are dealing with a single point, an individual, the birth of an individual point of awareness. So really, the story of the zodiac from Aries to Pisces is how an individual point becomes a single unit. No, how an individual point becomes a multitude. That's really what it is. From Pisces to Aries is how a multitude becomes an individual point. That is the birth of awareness, because think about it. A baby is formed in the womb for 9 months. It's a watery environment. It is the environment of Pisces. And as soon as a baby is born, that is the ascendant that would traditionally be Aries. So Pisces to Aries signifies the birth of human awareness, self-awareness. And so the individual begins to develop from Aries all the way back to Pisces by increasing in scale. And the way that we do that is not as a collection of molecules, which is what happens from Pisces to Aries, but as a collection of individuals. So Aquarius signifies a pattern of within the collective working together for the good of the entire collective. Now, the collective that Aquarius represents is smaller than the collective that Pisces represents, because Pisces represents the collective as one unit, the collective, the multitude acting as one. In the Aquarius is the preparation for that acting as one. But as the precession of equinoxes, we have experienced Pisces before Aquarius. Now, the reason and what that does to humanity is that we have experienced the desire for oneness without truly understanding what it is. In Aquarius, we now come to understand the last 2,000 and a bit years, why we have been acting the way that we have done, because we have not been able to see the world and ourselves clearly the last 2,000 plus years, because we have been seeing the world from the perspective of the Piscean lens. And I told you that in Pisces, everything is spiritualized because the dynamics are so concentrated. The numbers, the sheer volume of the dynamics of all the individual trajectories, you cannot separate them into individual trajectories. There are too many of them. There are infinitely many of them, and they're all bunched up together. You can't really see how it goes. And so it tends to create a spiritual type of knowing, where nothing is clear, everything is fuzzy. In Aquarius, the fog begins to clear. The dynamics, the trajectories begin to reduce in number until they come into view clearly. So it's like looking at a human body. You can't really see what is inside the human body. You just assume that so the human being must be XYZ. And then in Aquarius, you develop X-ray vision, magnetic resonance imaging, and now you can see that the individual is made up of components. You can see the skeleton within the individual. You know that this thing that looked like a mass of irreducible things can actually be reduced to different types of perspectives. That is the precession of the equinoxes, from Pisces, which is a much higher level of intelligence, to Aquarius, which is much lower. Now, what is going to be investigated in Aquarius, in the age of Aquarius, is how we understood the age of Pisces. And it is my guess that we are going to laugh at ourselves considerably, especially all the bullshit stories that we told ourselves that were stimulated by the Piscean age. Because we didn't know what we were doing. Because Pisces is the highest vibration possible. When you come into contact with that type of vibration, you don't know what it is. You don't have the experience to know what it is. And so you dream up all sorts of things. In Aquarius, your consciousness begins to settle down. It begins to reduce. The connections begin to gradually reduce. And so you can see the dynamics of what will eventually become Pisces. You can see how it now takes shape within the mind. So the age of Aquarius will be typified by a very detailed understanding of complex systems. Life will be understood. The phenomenon of life will be understood. The universe will be understood. It won't be mysterious anymore. Space-time will be understood. Diseases, all these things, they will all be understood. Precisely. Death will be understood. Some people think Aquarius is all about technology. Well, it is not. Technology really is a reduction of intelligence. You want to know why? Because the most sophisticated tech, if you want to call it that, this side of the universe is a human being. There's nothing more sophisticated than a human being. A human being is at the cutting edge of what is materially possible, physically. There is no technology you will create that will be sufficiently more advanced. If there was if such a possibility existed, nature would have created it already. And silicon does not come close to replicating the organized complexity that carbon is capable of. For those techno people out there, computers are good at doing a single thing. They're good at repeating something very many times, very quickly. And we've been able to use that cleverly to simulate all sorts of things. But even computers are reaching the limit of what is possible. You've reached the limit of what a silicon can build on a micro scale. That's why the universe used carbon to build the human brain. Because it is only that level of sophistication and organized complexity that can do what? That can spark self-consciousness, self-awareness. So for those who are hoping that the age of Aquarius would bring true AI, no. True AI is human nature, human intelligence. And the best way to get human intelligence is how nature has done it, carbon. That's really what it is. So in the age of Aquarius, we'll understand the true nature of self-awareness. We'll even build self-aware systems, but they won't look anything like the systems we're building today. And when we start to build those systems, we'll understand human nature even deeper, because we'll now understand why we are the way that we are. We will come to absolute conclusion that we too were built. Because we'll face all the challenges of self-consciousness, and there are many. Our nature, the eternal questioning model that we are, the ability to disobey what we are, our fundamental nature. Those are hallmarks and features of self-awareness. Now, the water, the symbolism for Aquarius, the water that is being poured out is the entire nature of self-awareness. Because the water is being replenished by the human. The human is not pouring a water they got from somewhere else. They're pouring a water that is coming from them. That water is their awareness of the world. So Aquarius is very global. It's very intellectual. And it is knowledge. It is not it's not any particular type of knowledge. It is knowledge as a class of its own with respect to self-consciousness and self-awareness. So in the age of Aquarius, it is humankind's knowing and how this relates to a cosmos. That is all that is going to be important. That is the science, that is the awareness that will be built in the next 2,000 and a bit years. We will come to understand that there ain't no universe out there. There's no objective universe per se, because right now, quantum mechanics, you see, can't really move forward with it because of the Piscean fugue, the Piscean fog. Don't really understand what it's saying, so it appears mysterious. In Aquarius, all these things, all these mysteries will disappear. The fog will clear. Things like religion, they will disappear completely. Those are part of the Piscean fog. So that's why nobody's really sure, clear what religion is talking about. People are always debating and quarreling and fighting and all these things. So another important thing that will clear in the age of Aquarius is the nature of who God truly is. Because God is not a religious concept. It just has looked religious simply because that's all Pisces was able to give. Human beings have really messed up with the age of Pisces, because that aspect of human nature, the part that is the Piscean vibration, which is the highest possible vibration, which is the highest possible resonance state of the human consciousness, of the human mind, because it makes you aware of all the supernatural aspects of reality, what you consider to be supernatural, because they're so high in what they are, the human mind cannot grapple with them. And so we spiritualize them, we turn them into fairy tales or things like that. It's truly the age of Pisces is truly out of this world as a phenomenon. The human mind is not easily capable of understanding what Pisces is all about. So we tend to restrict it to only the imaginative faculties. But in Aquarius, like I said, the detail, the pressure from all the details of Pisces begin to reduce. And so the mind is better able to grapple with these things. And that creates a sense of self-awareness that is deeper, because it allows us to reduce certain things and to investigate certain concepts much more deeper, to be able to see right to the essence of what they're talking about. And it is in this way that all of humanity will change. All the systems that we have built with the fog of Pisces, because you have to understand that every human being has been perceived as Piscean. So every human being is like a fog. People don't see themselves clearly, and they don't see each other clearly. So they don't see how to achieve they have not seen how to achieve the merits of Pisces, which is a total unification into oneness. And so instead of that unification occurring, the world was divided, fragmented, which is the exact opposite of what the energy is supposed to be. And that's why the age of Aquarius is now very dangerous. Because humanity is not prepared for that level of self-consciousness that is Aquarius. Because an Aquarius is like the fog clears in the mind, and you see everything that has been done for the last 2,000 plus years. You see the level of stupidity. It's like, and some people think it's just a little bit of examination, like reflecting on your life. No, it's like when you look at those who you consider to be primitive Stone Age people or hunter-gatherers, how do you feel about their behavior? You look down on them because, these were very primitive people. Compare the stones they were using for tools to your everyday laptop that is able to, to your sophisticated 21st century electronics. But that's exactly what it is. When 2,000 years from now, you're looking at how humanity has lived the last 2,000 years, and you'll be filled with disgust. Most people will, because what have we done? And that's the examination for the beginning of that change starts from next year, when Pluto goes into Aquarius. In the last 2,000 years of Pisces, Pluto has gone into Aquarius 4 to 5 times. So it's nothing new. And every time it did that, it sparked a revolution within the human mind, a desire for clarity that the Piscean age would not allow because of those who were in charge of it. Those who were in charge of it, or who seized control of the age of Pisces, right, would not allow humankind to ascend to those higher levels. So they took the age of Pisces and then they dominated it and restricted it to religion. And then used these religions to wage wars. Now, all the institutions that we have today around the world emerged from this type of thinking. And that's what Pluto in Aquarius begins to examine. Pluto begins to examine these so-called global institutions that have been created for the good of all mankind. It begins to examine them for abuses of power. And boy, are they a lot. Starting from the quintessential Aquarian vehicle, which was supposed to be the United States, which has totally abused its power. All men were free. At the same time, it was enslaving a whole lot of men. And has hidden, Pluto is that thing that you hide, has hidden its true motives, controlling the world, enslaving people and making them, That's the system of the world, from the United States to the United Nations to all these so-called global institutions. They've not been created for humankind, for the benefit of humankind. They've been created for the benefit of a very few. And that's the job they have been doing ever since. When Pluto starts its ingress into Aquarius, it's very close now. So the pressure has started. It will explode all these organizations. It will destroy every single one of them. Because that's the nature of Pluto. Pluto is that energy of that aspect of nature that breaks things down, things that are no longer fit for purpose, things that are no longer serve the required function in nature. They are broken down, decayed, and then new things are constructed to take their place. So Pluto is the quintessential evolutionary function in a sense. And the thing about the plutonic forces and plutonic energies is that once the decay has started, it is unstoppable, irreversible. It only has one outcome. It doesn't matter what anybody or anything does. And the decay has started. That's why you have a lot of people running up and down with all sorts of conspiracy theories. Where do you think conspiracy theories are? Visions that people get that are deviated from the mainstream thinking. And they are suspicions because they do not trust those in authority. That's where conspiracy theories come from. They are quintessentially Aquarian. And as we move towards deeper and deeper into this age of Aquarius, which officially starts next year, right? These things proliferate without limit. Because they are vanguards of the future. What you're looking at are the yearnings for the Aquarian ideal of freedom. The freedom to think whatever you want to think. The freedom to not be controlled, not be regulated, and all these things. Now, that freedom wouldn't be so strong. The yearning for that freedom wouldn't be so strong if there hasn't been reprehension for the last, I don't know how many, whatever years. Now, think of all the reprehension that has taken place in the world. For instance, you look at Black African people all across the world. They are the world's biggest open secret. The fact is that the world has been run on a model of white supremacy where Black Africans has been suppressed in such a way that they're not allowed to have any type of power or influence in the world. The entire world has actively worked together to prevent the emergence of the strong Black African nation anywhere on the planet, so that all Black African nations are maintained at third world level. You have to understand that that type of behavior is plutonic, because you're not really supposed to talk about it, even though that's what has been going on for years, for centuries. It is maintained by those in power, transferred from generation to generation as an unspoken type of behavior. This is what we do. We don't publicize it, we don't talk about it a lot, but this is the policy. That is plutonic behavior. And the one thing that Aquarius cannot contain is that type of behavior. Now, the pressure on that system has been growing, forcing different aspects of these features into the light gradually. Now, next year is going to be like a shot of adrenaline. It's going to force all of it into the light. So much of what has been hidden in this world will be revealed, and it will be revealed at astonishing rates. Do you know what that is going to do to the masses of people around the world? Barack Obama, so-called black president, first black president of the United States. The guy wasn't even black. I mean, his mother is a white Jewish woman. He was raised literally like a white person. He's not the son of enslaved Black Africans in the US. And look at what it did to that country. It drove them mad, because immediately after the election of the tenure of Barack Obama, Americans went and elected the opposite end of the spectrum. Think about a pendulum. If you pull a pendulum to one side significantly and you release it, what does it do? It immediately finds the other extreme. You're dealing with a dynamical system. You think that was all of that is a coincidence? Because none of these behaviors can be taken into Aquarius. Aquarius is the exact opposite of those things. Aquarius doesn't care whether you're blue, black, green, or whatever. It values competence above all. And what has happened in the world is that the game of competence has been rigged for centuries. where the economic system has allowed some people to eventually become more competent than others because it has suppressed a group of people, their aspirations, dreams, and everything. It has dampened all of that, such that it has controlled insidiously and according to hidden rules and hidden motives. It has controlled the outcomes that have been possible, such that you look around the world today, everywhere you look in the world, you have anti-black behavior, anti-black African. They hate black people everywhere in the world. Doesn't matter where you go. Even if you go into black Africa itself, they hate themselves. The black Africans in the US hate the black Africans in Africa. The black Africans in South Africa hate everybody, including themselves, and black Africans everywhere else. It's madness. And that's the way global trauma plays out. Chronic traumatic experiences. That's how they all play out. They destroy cognition. But the destruction has not just been one-sided. Because if you have to hold somebody down, you have to be down yourself. So the other side of the transaction is that all the people that have identified with this process of suppressing others and holding them down, the so-called white supremacists, they have been held down too, but they don't know it. And so there's a general sickness within humanity, a sickness that cannot be transformed into Aquarius. And that brings us to the danger, the inherent dangers of the transition of Pluto through Aquarius. If you think that Pluto through Capricorn was dangerous, you're about to see something that you have never seen before. By the time Pluto is done going through Aquarius, ready to go into Pisces, the entire world would have united into one. Which means there are no more countries, no more individual currencies of countries, and all these types of thinkings, all these behaviors of, a child who's born in the Gambia and a child who's born in Norway, at birth they have radically different destinies, assuming that their parents are nobody significant, nobody important, just average people. It is a difference that has been systematically engineered into a reality. Those are the things that Pluto through Capricorn begins to examine. And where these things are found wanting, where these games have been played, these power games, because all of those things constitute an abuse of power. And wherever these things are found, they will be destroyed. Doesn't matter what anybody does or how anybody thinks about it. This is the future. And that's what makes it very dangerous. Because it is a danger that has been created out of what? Ignorance. That's really what it is. Okay? Now, there are so many things I want to say. So many areas I want to take this into. But that's going to make the podcast extremely very long. So what I have done is to lay the foundational truth. Now, you can get creative with this and extend that into different areas, because everybody has Aquarius in their natal chart, and Pluto is going to be transiting through Aquarius in everybody's natal chart. And so everyone has a role to play in the overall pattern that is the age of Aquarius, because we all have Aquarius. Where you have Aquarius and where you have Pluto transiting through Aquarius in your natal chart shows you the role that you're going to, because that Pluto and that Aquarius is going to activate your placements in Aquarius. Is going to activate your natal Pluto, your natal Aquarius, and all these things, and especially when transits and aspects, if these things make transits and aspects. So that's how these transits and progressions, that's how they activate us. They activate us to play our role in the overall theater and drama that is the human experiment. There are reasons why I call it the human experiment. I'll go into that. And if you've been listening to my podcast, you probably started piecing it together. It is one grand experiment. It's an experiment in the perception of unity. The perception and the implementation of unity. Now, the cheat code is that it doesn't really matter what humans do. Unity is inevitable. Unity is the natural state of everything. The question now becomes, how much of it can you perceive? Your closeness to that perception determines how awoken you really are. The whole woke thing that has now been corrupted. The idea came from black folks that were being traumatized all around the world by white supremacy, because white supremacy it hides all its insidious motives. You see, the fact that it hides what it does, it's its own self-judgment, because it is aware that what it is doing is wrong. But that's a different conversation altogether. Now, black African people coined the term being woke, meaning being aware of the game, the insidious game that is being played against you, so that you know how to act accordingly. That's where the terminology came from. Today it has been taken up by people and bastardized. You think it's a coincidence? Hip hop started in the black African community as a way of dealing with the trauma, that is the chronic exposure to the brutality of white supremacy. But some people hijacked it and turned it into gangster music and gangster rap and started incentivizing those aspects of the communication so as to derail the entire thing. Because what the world has worked for collectively, and I'm talking about the entire world outside of black Africans, the entire world has worked to ensure that the black African remains absolutely powerless. It's a collective agenda. It's not the only people who are not into this are the majority of the black Africans, but you cannot do it without the participation of certain black Africans, and those are the so-called political ruling classes of most of black Africa. They're all in the game. They have sold out. Why wouldn't they? They're afraid of death and they're afraid of poverty. But the black African has been the food source for the world for a very long time. These are all games, hidden games. And you have all sorts of variations. People talk about, oh, black Africans sold themselves into slavery. Oh, these are all games. These are all lies. Oh, black people are violent, black on black crime. Oh, these are all stories and these are all lies. The people who arranged all these things, they know what they have done. You don't need to go into details. They know exactly what they have done. They know the game they have been playing on this planet for a really long time. The question now is, it's judgment time. That's really what it is. These are not religious concepts. These are not things that you have to be a religious believer to understand. If you understand the physics that is the way this universe works, the physics that created humanity, that makes humanity self-aware, it's a physics. It's very different in a sense from the physics that you are taught in school, or the so-called cutting-edge physics. Because from the cutting-edge physics that you have today, you cannot see how a human being is possible. A self-aware, do you know what it means? Do you know what self-awareness is? I'm talking about a bunch of inanimate objects construct the phenomenon of life and then evolve that life to the point where it becomes self-aware. Self-awareness is basically a bunch of carbon atoms saying, I am a bunch of carbon atoms. No, it's worse than that, because you don't know what carbon atoms are in the first place. So it's literally an awareness that comes from ignorance. That is the light emerging from the darkness. The first light is the light of self-awareness, and it triggered for the very first time in a black African human being. That ought to mean something. So how does the world now suppress the black African human everywhere to be able to develop a concept of the entire universe that excludes the black African human? Pluto is that gap. A gap that has been created for the purposes of what? Seizing power, influence, taking it, grabbing it by force. Astrology helps us to understand what self-consciousness is, because it's a physics on its own. That is a physics that is tied to the very fabric of the physics of existence itself. There is no disparity between them. They are all one system. That was supposed to be the gift of Pisces. But instead, this understanding was hijacked, and a lightning rod was created to channel all the imaginings that would have been associated with Pisces for the last 2,000 years, and to channel all that imagining towards things, fabricated religions, so that the narrative can be twisted and controlled whichever way they like, to be able to control masses of people for the purposes of what? Power. And where has that left humanity? It has left humanity in a state incapable of processing Aquarius. That makes the transition from Pisces to Aquarius to be the most dangerous period in human history. Most people don't understand it. You sit down, watch your television, you don't understand what you're watching. You don't understand what you're listening to. You do not have the concept of unity to be able to put together all the information that is coming into your awareness to understand what is really going on. Some people are busy interpreting it from a religious point of view. Oh, it's the end times. Oh, it's the end. What the hell are you talking about? You know how long this planet has been here? You know how long humanity has been on this planet? I suggest you do some reading. Go back into history. Well, most of history is a fabricated lie anyway. But there are still threads here and there that you can begin to piece together. It's a lot of work. But if you're dedicated and you're a seeker of truth, if you have that calling inside you, you will find the threads and the pieces that you can use to start reconstructing, to understand what's going on today. But by the time astrological Pluto is ready to leave astrological Aquarius in 20 years' time, you will not recognize this planet. It starts by, the world has been divided into first world, second world, third world. It's maintained that way. Black Africans are grouped into a third world status. The Black Africans that exist in the first world country, so-called first world countries, they're all in bondage, one type of bondage or the other. Even if they don't know it, that's their problem. That's their awareness. But they have no collective power, okay? And even though they have begun to stare because the song has begun to be sung. Now, some part of their consciousness, some part of their awareness, they're beginning to hear that song because it's not an audible song. But they don't know what they're listening to. They don't know what is happening. You get to most of them have been Christianized to the point where they're all damn stupid now. Most of them don't know how to deal with their trauma. They don't even know they've been traumatized. Somehow they think that 100 centuries of trauma just disappears like that. It doesn't. It's there, fully present and active. That's why it was created, to act as a burden of sorts. It needs to be processed, which means it needs to be acknowledged. And this is not confined to, the Black Africans that were taken to the Americas or something like. It's not confined to them. The same thing was done to the Black Africans on the continent that remained on the continent. The attack on Black Africa was complete, total. It was full spectrum attack. In every facet of human experience, they were stripped of power. And then the world hushed everything and decides to build utopia on top of these bones and these blood streams and carcasses. I'm talking billions of people eliminated across the world. That's the secret of Pluto. I don't understand how humanity thinks that it can move into Aquarius without dealing with this, without confronting this, without settling this. It's impossible. And that's what makes the transition extremely dangerous. I don't want to go into how the physics affects the mind, because that's where it all plays out. The nature of realities that come together, merge, converge, and diverge. What you call the processing of awareness, perception. It's a physics. To think that you're actually in control of that physics is the greatest stupidity of the modern age. You are not more aware of it than you are aware of what your kidneys are doing moment to moment, or what your liver is doing moment to moment. You have no idea into how all these aspects of reality, these perceptions of reality. You have no idea what these things are doing. And yet, they're a part of you. That's how it works. The physics of consciousness is the most powerful thing. You cannot control it. You're not aware of it. It has a physics, a calculus on its own. The sense of I, which we all experience as human beings, is merely softened on the surface layer of all of that potential awareness. Just in the tiniest little hole for perception. We're just along for the ride, but we have no control over the ride itself. We depend on logic, but we don't understand that our biological systems continuously reproduce what we see as logic. Our interpretation of what is going on as a universe, as a reality, is tied to our biology. It is inescapable. We try to build systems of understanding that can give us an objective sense of reality without the human. And that's impossible. And the very concept, the very idea is a tautology. You're the one building the system. So how different can it really be from you? You see how the madness works? You always think that there is an outside. There is no outside. That's what it means to be a universe. There is no outside. It is always one thing. Always one. It's a full immersive experience. There is no outside. And so there is no way to exclude yourself from the consequences of what you have done. And so we move into a significant stage of global self-reflection, where everyone has to redefine what their role is. And so these institutions that have been the cornerstone for the perception of reality on earth for the human race, they're all going to be scrutinized and examined. And if they are not found fit for purpose, and when I mean purpose, I'm talking about a purpose that cannot be intimidated, cannot be whitewashed, cannot be blackballed, cannot be painted, cannot be denied, cannot be killed, cannot be removed. There's nothing you can really do about it. Because the examination is taking place at the most fundamental of levels. That's the plutonic energy. There's a reason why Pluto sits on the far end of the solar system. It's not alone there. It has all these other planetoids sitting out there in the darkness. Astrologically, I always explain that when you look at the solar system, you're not really looking at the physical system. You're looking at the nature of self-awareness. But you're looking at it in a form that you can understand and you can accept. It's one of the things I teach in my class. In my very first session on natal chart synthesis, this is what I teach. We spend a lot of time looking at these concepts, examining them in detail. You look at a central sun with planets orbiting around, and it seems to be the ubiquitous structure everywhere you look in the universe. Well, that structure is not out there. It is you. Because that structure is the structure of what self-awareness looks like, what awareness looks like, developing awareness looks like. Those are the systems that eventually create beings that are self-aware. They can only be self-aware according to the programming of that system, of their sun. That is the physics of consciousness. It is the physics of blackness, the physics of organization, the physics of organized complexity. Right now, you can imagine the type of interest on planet Earth right now, because all the sapient beings in the universe know what is about to occur on Earth. They've been waiting for this time for a really long time, when human beings can become aware, because they've always been here, but you're not aware of them simply because you cannot accept them into your reality. The kind of reality we run on this planet is a degenerative form of reality. And it has been degenerating for thousands of years. In fact, Pisces was a complete disappointment. So we approach Aquarius. And the thing about Aquarius, like I said, it is the only astrological sign that is symbolized by a human. So it means that all the things we're dragging into Aquarius right now are like monsters in the dark. Creatures, things. The only thing we can take into Aquarius is humanity, being human. Now we have to understand what that really means from a fundamental, existential level. What does it truly mean? And when we begin to understand it, then we begin to correct the entire world. And in that correction, almost everything that you see today as a global whatever, it has to go. Don't you know that? Because you can't accept it anymore. You, the collective masses out there listening to this, you will not be able to accept it anymore. And that's what makes it extremely dangerous. But I like to believe that in this physics of consciousness, this physics of blackness, there's always a plan, because it is the most intelligent system. It is the most intelligent possibility ever. It has a way for everything. It has guided humanity this far. And even though the last couple of thousand years have been a disaster, but who tells you that it is not a prescribed disaster? Because you think that unity can only be achieved from one side. It's not true. Unity can be achieved from the other side. So people might have a desire to fragment everybody because it makes them powerful and control everybody and everything. But when you fragment everything enough, it becomes united. has so many of these pieces, but you are not, no one, the pieces become so small, nobody can tell that they exist anymore. That's one very important property of the universe. The universe does not understand scales, really. The biggest and the smallest, no difference to it. It treats all the same. Infinitely big, infinitely small, same thing. Infinitely heavy, infinitely light, the same thing. Now, these are the theories I developed in my book, The 5 Principles of Organized Complexity. It's really the foundational text for all of this. Truly, truly something else. Because in the book, I introduced the 3 6s, the one that scares everybody out of their minds. It's nothing to be afraid of. It's like being afraid of the chemical formula for water, H2O. If you like, you can be afraid of it, but it doesn't mean anything. It doesn't change the nature of H2O. It doesn't change the nature of water. H2O is simply your understanding of water. And that doesn't change the properties of water. It doesn't matter how you feel about it. It doesn't matter what you think you know about it. It doesn't mean anything. Those feelings actually just reflect where you are on your own developmental sequence. And that's exactly what the 3 6s are. They represent your own understanding of where you think you are. If where you think you are does not correspond to where you really are, then the problem is yours. So that is my first introduction to Pluto's ingress into Aquarius as the official beginning of the age of Aquarius proper. And it is not a coincidence that the United States, being the quintessential Aquarian vehicle, is having its Pluto return the year before Pluto finally goes into Aquarius. You think it's a coincidence? It is not. Like I said, this is beyond human understanding. But we'll get there. So that brings me to the conclusion of this first episode. There are going to be 3 episodes of Pluto's that I'm going to give regarding Pluto's ingress into Aquarius, because the ingress lasts from March 2023 all the way to January 2024, when Pluto finally goes into Aquarius permanently. This, like I said, is the official beginning for the age of Aquarius. It also means something. The significance of this transit of Pluto into Aquarius is that it is the revelation of the Aquarian. Aquarius is a special light. It's a special type of self-awareness in the zodiac that is very different from all the others. It is an awareness of the depth of human self-knowledge. And so Pluto's complete move into Aquarius will reveal the Aquarian, the one with the light of Aquarius, the knowledge of self-awareness. And that will change the entire world.